What is up, everybody? Svenddiesel here with Sportsman's Warehouse. We're going to be tying up a damsel nymph. This is one that I tried to simplify, something that you can just tie a bunch of and go fish. Now we're using a TMC 5263. This is a size 8. I usually fish these in about a 6 to a 12. We're going to be using some UTC 70 denier thread in black. You want to keep it as thin as you can. If you're not comfortable tying with that thin, you could always step it up a little bit thicker. We're going to be using some Nymph eyes. These are the size medium. If you're going to be using a smaller hook, make sure that you adjust for that and use a smaller size. Now I tie these in a few different colors of this olive Marabou. You can see there's this grizzly that I really love, but we're going to go with this light olive here. Super effective here in the high mountain lakes. So we're also going to be using some UTC. This is some Brassie wire in gold. That's going to secure down our body, and of course you can see from the fly here we're going to be needing some Scud back here. This is 1/8 inch in light gray. You can also go with an olive or dark olive, and for the head we're going to be adding a little bit of flash here in this eye stub. So let's go ahead and get started. We got our hook in the vise. We're going to go ahead and start our thread right here behind the eye, making sure just to lay down a nice thread base for what we're going to be tying in next, and that's the mono eyes. You want to make sure that that thread base is secure, and these mono eyes have a little bit of a flat side, so you want to find that. I use this hook eyes and orientation to secure these eyes so that they're always the same, placing them on and then rotating it with some figure 8 wraps here to secure it. If it's skuwampus one way or the other, you can always counter crossover wrap it to get it straight and just kind of make sure it's level. You could probably put down a little bit of super glue if you want, but we're going to be dubbing this head, so it's not really necessary to secure it, because the dubbing of course will kind of cushion it. So we're going to lay down a nice thread base down the shank of this hook, and right here towards the bend you're going to lay down a little bit extra thread for what we're going to be tying in for the tail. I'm going to grab a little 6-inch piece of that wire, whatever you're comfortable with in length, and we'll go ahead and just tie that in on the top of the shank and then work our way down towards the rear of the hook and kind of twist it over to the opposing side for that first wrap. Makes it a little easier. And we got a good chunk of thread here so that we can now tie in our tail and body. We're going to be using this for both, so you want to get a nice long feather here, and I'm going to cut out the tip, which allows for a little bit more movement of the fly in that tail, so you don't have the stem in there. And then I'm going to prep it by seeing to make sure that we got, one, the length of the fibers here, and two, that we don't have a bunch of loose ends when I undo this. You can see that it's grouped together, and I'll go ahead and tie that in with about 3 to 4 wraps, and then I'll step behind it, making sure to get that wire out of the way. And this is just to secure that tail so that when we wrap this and twist it up on our body, it's not going to twist over the shank of the hook, making it a little easier to finish this fly. And then I'll do a few wraps in front of that Marabou, another 1 or 2 over the top. And as you get better with this, you can create more uniform bobbies, go a little bit sparser when you twist up this Marabou. But this is a super quick little tie. We're going to advance our thread right here behind the mono eyes. And this is why you want to make sure that you have a good feather, because when you twist this up, if you've got a bunch of straggles or shorter fibers, you definitely want to select a different feather. And then I'll go ahead and start palmering this around. I'll start ribbing it the other way so that we can cover up our thread wraps. And we just want to basically do touching wraps with this Marabou all the way up. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do these. This is just one way you utilize the whole feather, kind of best bang for your buck. But we'll go ahead and tie that off right there behind the eyes. Sometimes on some of the smaller ones, depending on how thick this clump is, I run that over the top of the eyes, and that's pretty much it. And you know, you can tie that off, but for this we're gonna add a little bit of flash, so I'll trim that out here at the top, take these longer straggle fibers and just kind of rip them out. Doesn't matter if you leave them on, because it's going to just blend in with the body of the fly. And so now I'm going to counter rib this Marabou. This is what is going to add the strength and durability to the fly, so that when this gets chomped by a bunch of fish, it's not going to fall apart. And so we'll counter rib that, meaning wrapping the opposite direction we wrapped our Marabou. That way it's holding it in place. And then as I get up here towards the eyes, I'm going to go over the eyes and then do about 2 or 3 wraps here in front. I've played around with finishing the fly with this gold wire, but I like the eye stub. So we'll tie that off and go ahead and trim it out. And we're going to next tie in our material that's going to kind of create the head of the fly, which is the scud back. And so I'm just going to take a little piece of this, roughly about a 4-inch piece, you know, whatever you're comfortable working with. This one's actually a little scrap I just found from tying a bunch of these, and so it's definitely shorter than about 1.5 inches. And so I'll go ahead and tie that in there on the top of the fly, making sure that we get it nice and secure, because we're going to pull that and stretch that over to finish this fly off, so we don't want it coming undone. And then we're going to put on quite a bit of dubbing, more so than you think, because we're going to be brushing this out. So you definitely want a good clump of dubbing. It takes me usually 1 to 2 times of dubbing this, depending on the size. If you definitely have a smaller fly like a size 12, you're not going to need as much ice dub. And so I'll get a good little clump here right behind to kind of transition that, because on the Damsel Nymph it definitely transitions from the smaller tail to the mid-sized body, and the head tends to be a little bit bulkier. Sometimes I'll take it a little farther back on one of these 3x long nymph hooks, but I kind of just keep them standard here with the smaller head. It seems to work better for me, especially when fishing them. So I'll basically make sure we got plenty of dubbing, zigzagging this up and through, and then I'll end with my thread right here on the head, and then I'll pull over this scud back. You want it to be fairly tight, but not, you know, super tight that, you know, you could potentially pull it out. We're not trying to, you know, lift heavy dumbbells here, just nice and secure. And then a little trick so it doesn't come out is I'll do 2 to 3 wraps in front of that, and then start to wrap up and over it. So basically we folded it back over itself, and then I keep my thread tension back towards the rear of the fly, towards the bend, and then I'll go ahead and whip finish. I don't let my thread drop straight down, because I've had potentially it slip off and then the scud back, and then I got to start over again. So keep that thread tension good. We'll do 2 3-turn whip finishes, trim that out, and then now I cut the scud back out. I don't pull it super tight, I just cut it as flush as I can. And then here comes the fun part. This is what's going to create some of that leg effect. We're going to brush out this ice dub, kind of working it around, and this is why we put on plenty of ice dub, because you can see as we brush it out, it definitely takes down the profile of that head more in proportion with the body of the fly. And then as this gets wet, it's going to just soak right in there and be super awesome. So not many variations to this fly, but you can get it more complicated, but that's what I've had fun with and fish. So thanks for watching. Make sure you click subscribe, and hope they catch some fish for you.